May I ask the audience to please settle down and we can begin our next session, which is broadly going to speak about the future of mobility or the new kind of mobility in the urban infrastructure space. I'm joined by Mr. Vijay Jaiswal and also Mr. Anshu Dewan, and I'm briefly going to ask them about the kind of work their company or their organizations have been doing, and probably then we'll take our discussion forward as to what kind of challenges this industry is facing and what kind of future entails in this mobility aspect. Also, we'll be able, if the time allows, then we'll probably take a couple of questions from our audiences onto this topic as well. Starting with Mr. Vijay Jaiswal, tell us something about the kind of work that your organization has been doing and why it is becoming so important and much talked about in these times.
Right. So thanks, Abhishek, for having me here for this very important discussion. My name is Vijay Jaiswal, and I am the director of Smart Freight Center India. Smart Freight Center India is a non-profit organization with its headquarters based in Amsterdam. We have been globally active for the last 11 years and have done a lot of work focused on freight decarbonization. So freight decarbonization is the space we focus upon. Don't talk about two-wheelers, three-wheelers, for a reason because we also see freight emissions as one of the key contributors to the global CO2 emissions, and also having probably the maximum opportunity to for climate action. We have been active in India for the last 2 years, working very closely with various policy offices, including Niti Aayog, MHI, PSA office, and also very, very closely with the Indian freight industry, which would include the freight buyers, companies like say Amazon, IKEA, Nestle, PepsiCo, cement companies, who have a freight item to move, and also with the service providers, who then carry these freight items from point A to point B. And collectively, we all come together to set some kind of ambition on how do we decarbonize their freight operations, find the right strategies, and then move ahead and implement those strategies. So this is what we have been doing in India for the last 2 years. The response has been great. The potential is huge. And we look forward to various opportunities of collaborating with the people in the room or otherwise on this very important topic.
Thank you, Mr. Jaiswal. And now I would ask Mr. Anshu.
So thank you so much for inviting us. And what IX Energy does is basically, truly follows the concept of circular economy, where we convert existing diesel commercial vehicles into pure electric, and thereby we exemplify the concept of reduce, reuse, and recycle. I'm a strong believer that economics is basically the main driver for any kind of social or environmental change. And I think most of us in Delhi would remember back in 2012 when e-rickshaws started plying in Delhi. There were no incentives, there was no infrastructure, they were actually illegal. But they still ran because economics was what was on their side. And it was with that paradigm that I started the company, where our goal was to develop fuel-saving technologies to reduce cost of logistics and passenger transit, right? So, and we strongly believe that economics should be the main decisive factor here, right? So initially, back when we started, we were the first to work with Tata Motors on their hybrid electric buses. And our proposal to them was that, look, it's at a fraction of a cost of a pure electric. Do it right now, and as the infrastructure improves, then go for pure electric, right? That was the paradigm, and we did 3 prototypes with them. The last one was a pre-production one. Unfortunately, Bharat Sarkar came in the middle, and they just said, you know what, China has gone pure electric, let's just jump and go directly there. Which is great, but then you have to make sure infrastructure supports are there, which obviously were severely lacking. Now today, last mile and mid-mile, there are better infrastructures available, and that is where we have decided to focus the trucks, the 2-ton to 6-ton truck category. We are converting and deploying it in the field. So that's what we do.
Starting with Mr. Jaiswal, our discussion, you said that your office or your work has also been in Amsterdam, and some part of your work is in India also. Right. So what's the kind of best practices that you have noticed while working in those parts of the world? Because I believe they are much more advanced where we are currently in terms of urban mobility, and that too with the based on renewable energy and the other infrastructural aspect that Mr. Anshu was also trying to elaborate. Where do you find the gap, or what are the basic elements that has ensured that they are so advanced in this sector also, but we are lagging behind much?
So one is that we have a global footprint, including North America, Canada, Europe, most of it, China, East Africa, and now in India as well. I would say barring China, more or less everywhere, it's more of almost every region is at an exploration stage. So the maximum that you've gone up to in Europe is say 1.2 or 2% kind of a transition. And I'm talking about medium and heavy duty trucks, and not so much about the light duty trucks because of the emissions footprint and the decarbonization potential. One is that what Ms. Anshu said, and that was spot on the point that we all need to look at is the economic viability is what will drive transition at any point of time. So globally also, when we are running various efforts, various pilots, various deployment at scale projects in various regions, the expectation from all our partners, be it the shippers and be it the LSPs, is that how can we achieve price parity between a diesel truck and an electric truck? What are the levers that you can apply to make that happen? And our learning so far has been that it's all about volumes of vehicles in a specific project, and the level of utilization of those assets in that particular project. This is what is the, I would say, the bullseye idea or the idea that will make this transition happen. And for that, again, there are a few sub-ideas which we have found to be very effective. One is that you take a use case specific approach. You don't try to just randomly apply electric trucks or electric vehicles on all kind of applications, but find the applications which are economically viable and operationally feasible. What I mean to say is that if I know very well that there's a product which only gives me a range of 250 kilometers maybe, I may be a bit cautious before attempting a corridor movement of say 400, 500 kilometers. That is possible, but not without putting up investments in charging infrastructure, which then impacts the viability, the economic viability part. So you have to find a balance between the operational feasibility and economic viability, and thus choose your use cases where you want to apply electric trucks. The second is that the volumes part. Where does the volume come from is that we have identified 4 levers through which you can build asset volumes. Because a pilot of say 2-wheeler vehicles, 5 vehicles, 10 vehicles will not give you the right understanding of what the real problems are. You only get the understanding of real problems when you go say 50 vehicles, 100 vehicles, 200 vehicles. But how do you get those volumes? Because one shipper or one LSP will be where you're putting that kind of investment forward. So can you aggregate the demand? Can you aggregate the demand of various shippers who are operating on one route between say 2 production or consumption hubs? Put their demand together, make them agree to operate as a consortium, and then take those volumes to the OEMs for a better pricing of the product. Take that volume to a charging infra company for better utilization of the charging infra and thus a better rate of power, and so on and so forth. So finding the right use cases, one very important thing that works very well. And second is the aggregation of demand of various shippers as one single demand, and then managed by a consortium to negotiate with the OEMs, to negotiate with the CPOs, and also negotiate with the policy offices. So when one company goes say, this is my expectation, the government would say, okay, we'll see to it. But if 20 companies goes and say that you're going to put 1,000 vehicles, this is the expectation, can you do something? Then the policy also pays attention to it. So 2 things.
Clearly, so I would...
Let me just add.
Please.
So I fully agree with what Vijay said, but one thing that, some low-hanging fruit, right? So spot on that, you have to choose the correct routes. So one of the things we focused on is, factory to depot movement, or like point-to-point movement where there's charging infrastructure on both sides, or the route is small enough that you can come back and charge from the origin, right? So that's definitely important. The challenge is something so small. So we all know that electric trucks are basically at an OPEX level almost 1/3 the cost of a diesel truck, right? So for example, the trucks that we are focusing on cost per kilometer for diesel is 12 rupees and for electric is 4 rupees, right? Assuming that you have a captive charging station or you're getting, charging at 8 rupees per unit. Now in that paradigm, you can recover the higher capex by just having you to sweat the asset, right? Drive the vehicle more kilometers than you would a diesel, right? But small things. So we are deployed at ITC, we are deployed at Dabur, at DS Group. Just small changes that, we are waiting for our freight to be loaded. But there are 2 or 3 freight, dispatch stations, all of them are occupied. All we are saying is for the green vehicles, give a dedicated, corridor. That's all. It's a simple thing. They have 20 that they don't use all of them, but the ones that they're using, they only have limited manpower, so they only open 4. And वो चारों भरे. अरे यार एक आप green के लिए कर दो. That's a small low-hanging fruit. I'm expecting some of the people here who are in FMCG or they can at least make this small change, and that itself can change the economics for what we are doing.
But I would also like to listen your point of view on the entire mobility that we are talking, that infrastructure is not well laid out.
Yes.
And probably that is one of the inhibition why this industry is not taking off. Also at the same time, I just feel that it's the chicken and egg situation where first the cars will come and probably then the infrastructure will be used. Or because I was just coming through this Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium sometimes back, and I saw one charging station totally covered under bush, and it was pretty much functional.
I've seen that.
It was blinking its lights, but somebody invested maybe few lakh rupees there, and it was just gone to the drain. So how will we be able to use that infrastructure? And if there will be no infrastructure, why people will buy the vehicle? Especially like Delhi's case or Bangalore's case can be still understood, because some people will buy for the fancy of those luxury or those 30% high cost of electric vehicle. But for the people where the larger market is in the tier 2 or tier 3 cities, why would somebody buy a vehicle which will have a charging station probably 20 kilometers from their home?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I'm going to answer it in 2 different ways. So first, again, if you want to break the chicken and egg conundrum, you have to first select certain niches in the market where it makes economic sense, like the point-to-point thing, where it's a round trip, right? So that is definitely one point. The other point is that the government can definitely look at incentives that they give for green vehicles. For example, something very small again, that allow, let's say, a certain category of vehicles to enter during no entry zones. Abhishek, I'm telling you, just if you do that in Delhi today, I can guarantee there'll be a significant upsurge in the adoption of electric trucks, because that privilege, imagine how many hours these drivers are sitting, how much money companies are wasting for those drivers to sit outside on the outskirts of Delhi. So if we can just do that part again, it will really push the move towards the electrification. And
turnaround time,
just because there's no entry time in Delhi, until from 11 till like 7 or 8 or whatever, you have to wait outside Delhi, right? If an electric truck is allowed to enter, that really changes the way a lot of freight companies will look at electric trucks, right? And finally, the very important point that you raised, somebody invested in an electric charging infrastructure. He's trying to make some money out of it. Somebody's invested in an electric truck. They're trying to also do some, monetization. Both of those interests are unfortunately at loggerheads. So, for example, when we go to a public charging infrastructure, they're charging us, let's say, 20 rupees per unit, 18 or 20 rupees per unit, right? Automatically at that price, the OPEX cost that I had, the advantage over diesel, that gets lost. Right? So somewhere here, the government needs to step in and say that, okay, I'm going to look at this as an infrastructure which government or private public partnership has to provide, where they reduce the cost of electricity being given to this guy, the charging infrastructure guy, so that he can then pass on the benefits. Only then will that virtuous cycle begin. Otherwise, you are right, we are stuck in a chicken and egg conundrum, which is going to be very difficult to break. And one thing I'll add, matlab aap sochiye, today we are talking about electric trucks. CNG, which has been a technology at least for the last 20 years, there are truckers that I've met who say कि sir मेरे को तो CNG truck खरीदने में डर लगता है कई बारी, because वहाँ पे इतनी लंबी लाइन होती है और कहीं मैं ऐसी रैंडम जगह जा रहा हूँ, वहाँ पे मुझे पता नहीं सीएनजी मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा. तो आप सोचिए 20 years से अभी सीएनजी का हम एक लेवल पे वी हैव नॉट क्रिएटेड एडिक्वेट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. Electric is still going to take longer.
So going forward, Mr. Vijay, I would like to know if the CNG adoption has taken us 20 years, which was again a renewable fuel, low cost, innovative stuff. This entire renewable energy infrastructure, which we try to, our urban mobility to be based upon, mostly it is coming from China. About 80 to 90% of its parts and the critical minerals are coming from China. It has a leverage over us. It is using it against us. So in that context, how independently we can decide or implement our policies on these these infrastructure or these urban vehicles with electricity?
So first of all, I come from a non-profit organization, so I need to take a neutral position, neither talk too much about policy gaps and not industry. But what we also know from our own practice is that somewhere we rely a bit too much on the government. Industry has also to come forward in a much more aggressive way. Now, why do we talk about whatever Mr. Anshu has said as the requirements or expectation of policy are very real? Just remove the entry barriers and see the utilization go up and economic viability work very well. 100% spot on. Green channels, perfectly great idea, and these will work very well. But that's something that government would do, and from our discussions with the policy officers, we know that these are under discussion. We are doing an impact analysis, and this might come sooner or later. But the question also is the industry doing enough? When I say industry, I'm primarily looking at the OEMs here. Now, why do we need all these supporters? Because the vehicles are very expensive. You want to offset the high upfront cost of the vehicle by getting these kind of support from policy. And why is the vehicle so expensive? Because the industry has not invested at scale or brought enough supply in the market for the prices to go down. And this is a problem which was also there when the RE market was shaping up. The Indian companies probably missed the race, is what we say, creating a space for the Chinese manufacturers to come in and flood the Indian market with their products.
So we really missed the bus.
We missed the bus, and we might again miss the bus if the Indian industry does not say that we will make investments in electric trucks, even if the market is not. And I tell you, the market will develop once the product are in the market. You talk to anybody in the market, say, do you want to buy electric truck? He says yes, but there are not enough options. That's the usual response that you get, be it commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, so on and so forth. And as soon as the options started coming in the market, people were happy to take them. Nexon growing at a pace which Tata never anticipated. MG going at a pace that they didn't expect it. The market is there. Industry just needs to bring more and more product in the market before a Chinese alternative comes and takes your market, right?
And also the vehicles who will have the turnaround time for a battery change or battery charger, which currently takes about a couple of hours. So probably that also needs to be lowered down to 15 minutes or maybe less than 30 minutes, so that one can be assured that, okay, he can take a pit stop and he can relax and have a breakfast. By that time, his vehicle will be totally charged. I was reading a report that currently India has about 12,000 charging stations, and we aim to take the number by up to 4 lakh by 2030, which at the current rate of going, it doesn't look like any possibility. And that probably that is somewhere we will be able to handle the mobility future that we currently talking about. But does that seem to be happening anywhere?
Let me give you a background. So I was working earlier with Telangana state government,
Yes.
and that's when I met Mr. Anshu long time back. This whole story around charging infrastructure absence being a bottleneck is a bit overhyped, because whatever stations are there are gathering dust.
Exactly,
you can see.
exactly.
So
That's
if there was such a dire need of those charging stations, at least those which are there would be utilized well, right? There would be a long queue, but there's no long queue. There's nobody over there. Why? Because that the charging infrastructure has to be seen from a scheme perspective and from an operational perspective, that any vehicle which is going to start its operation in the morning is not going to look for a charging station as long as it can avoid it. It will always start with the battery 100% charge. That's what we do with our mobile phones also, because we know that if we will find a charging point for this
And
or
I
not.
think this is one of the problem why we in Delhi NCR region, most of the electric vehicles that we sit, they don't put their lights on in the evening, and that's one hazard.
Yeah.
Because they believe that more the electricity they can do maybe a couple of ferries more of
Right.
passenger rather than having those lights on.
Right. So putting up a charging infrastructure in public space is like you don't need real estate, you need some kind of a commercial licenses, you need utilization guarantee, so on and so forth. You just first start look at where the vehicle is starting from, where it is ending, ensure a charging infrastructure there, and because you know that how many vehicles are going to start from there and how many are going to end, you also has a good visibility on the utilization and thus the business case. That's where the focus should be. And charging infrastructure on the way is more of an opportunity infrastructure, which I think is will come up. So when people tell me that, "Oh, why can't the electric trucks move on the highways, long highways? There is no charging infrastructure." I said, let's not do that because there are certain routes in India where the electric buses, large electric buses are plying, and they already are being charged on the highways. So let's first look at those routes. Let's start from there and then say where else you want to go and then ask for the, so first put the vehicles and anybody in the charging infrastructure business will be more than happy to put it there if there is a assurance on the utilization. And the assurance on the utilization can also come from, say, commitments, right? So if I know that, an Amazon is going to fly its vehicle from, say, Delhi to Jaipur, and there's only one charging infrastructure, there can be a utilization contract between the two. That will also ensure that, first of all, the asset or the infra is utilized well, and somebody is also making money in the process.
Okay. Also, Mr. Anshu, I would like to understand where is the more keenness on adopting this technology? Because a normal middle-class person who doesn't want to spend 10 to 20 lakh rupees on a vehicle would preferably go to a petrol vehicle still without thinking 5 to 10 years of future, which is coming at 30-40% cheaper than the electric vehicle. While the corporates may plan for 10 or 15 years ahead, and they can invest crores of rupees for a vehicle which can ultimately be running, at a cost that will be beneficial in 5 to 10 years. So, your experience as to which is more adapting to this,
I would like to, because
middle class or the corporate sector?
No. I think there is again a contradiction here. Look at the Indian car consumer market, right? As long as a person is able to find a diesel variant, he prefers it over a petrol variant, right? Despite knowing that a diesel variant will come at a premium, right? Why? Because he's going to save on the daily running cost. Now, why doesn't that ideas again apply on electric? He will be happy to pay the premium for electric as long as he knows that he will be saving on the daily cost. So the confidence that I get is that the Indian customers, middle class customers, always prefer a diesel vehicle over a petrol. But they will again be, because they are smart enough, they can quickly calculate that I'm paying 3 to 4 lakh extra, but I'm going to save probably a lakh every year on my energy cost. I'll be happy to switch. That's not the problem.
So,
let me answer it. So I've actually 100% what Vijay is saying. I've also been curious that why is the adoption taking such a long time, given the economics seem to be in sync. So I've spoken to regular, people, and they say कि sir मेरी जो second गाड़ी है that I buy electric. For them, there is a fear that look, sometimes I have to go to Agra or Jaipur, which may be once a year, twice a year. But for that, they will say कि I need to have a conventional vehicle. But the one I want to use for my daily commute, that I'll make electric. Now I'll tell you about the corporates. Interestingly, in corporates, the move towards electrification is happening, at least for their for the captive vehicles. Like, corporates have their vehicles for, taking stuff around or executives around. They're going electric because there's a pilferage issue that they're trying to resolve.
Okay.
Lot of drivers.
Steal petrol.
Yes.
Petrol.
Right. So for them, just making it electric just gets rid of that headache ki ji kitne average aa rahi hai, every, that calculation they had to do to justify those are the small factors which are actually driving that. But like I said, the bigger adoption is, the elephant in the room is still that the large freight carriers that need to look at electric as an economically viable model. That what Vijay is saying, I fully endorse that. And unfortunately, that I don't know why that seems to be missing. Now, you asked earlier about, Vijay had mentioned about OEM. So I'll tell you, so we were one of the 5 companies that was invited. So we had some R&D project. We were working with Ashok Leyland. So they invited us to their R&D center in Chennai. And one of the things that they shared with us was their future technologies. They were working on pure electric they already have. They were looking at fuel cell electric, and they were looking at hydrogen combustion. And honestly, I think this is one of the problems that we are seeing. I'm personally seeing that that OEMs are reluctant to invest in technology because technology is changing very quickly. None of the OEMs today are betting big that whether they can predict that will hydrogen combustion and green hydrogen be the next big thing. So should I put a factory making cells in an environment where they may become obsolete, right? So the happy sort of a balance that we've been in touch with both Ashok Leyland and Tata Aisha. One of the things we have kind of realized is that in the mid-mile, last-mile connectivity, electrics might be the way to go, but in the longer distances, where, the hydrogen may be a more viable option. At least that's what they are suspecting.
Also, is there some kind of technology hitting that the companies are holding back because every 6 months we say a new model of Apple coming out, which we believe that the Apple already had developed like 5-6 years ago. So, like when we say about a battery having a capacity to run on 400 kilometers already available.
Abhishek ji, मेरे को तो उल्टा लगता है, especially in this automotive thing. The smarter move would be that if you have something in the pipeline, quickly monetize it because the pace of change is so rapid. आप ये देखिए ना, जब अभी हमने स्टार्ट किया था काम तो उस टाइम लिथियम मेटल हाइड्राइड वाज द बिग थिंग. अब सोडियम बैटरीज आ गई. अब सोचिए किसी ने अगर उसका सेल बना दिया था पुरानी टेक्नोलॉजी का, अब नई टेक्नोलॉजी आ गई है, LTO सेल्स आ गए हैं. Those people are really anxious कि will I be able to recoup the invested amount. So for them it makes sense कि कोई टेक उनके पास आई हो, जल्दी से मार्केट में ले जाओ, make it monetize it and then start looking at what else we should do.
But आप ये बात तो मानेंगे कि अगर किसी को अपनी पहली कार खरीदनी हो जिसमें कि शायद वो कभी जयपुर आगरा छोड़े मथुरा तक ही आना जाना कर सके और शायद इलेक्ट्रिक पावर पॉइंट नहीं है कहीं, तो पहली गाड़ी इलेक्ट्रिक कैसे खरीदेगा?
देखिए रेंज काफ़ी बढ़ गई है आज की डेट में. आप देखिए MG की, टाटा की, अब रेंज इज़ मच बेटर. देखिए पहला एक्सपीरियंस जो था ना, महिंद्रा की गाड़ी निकली थी, एक और OEM निकाली थी, हाँ, उसके अंदर अनफॉर्चुनेटली द एक्सपीरियंस इज डिसमल. उन्होंने प्रॉमिस किया था 100 किलोमीटर, वो 80 में उसकी चार्ज खत्म हो जाती थी.
बिल्कुल.
तो दैट लेफ्ट अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ अ बैड टेस्ट इन द माउथ ऑफ स्केप्टिकल पब्लिक कि यार ये देखो क्या. तो थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा. But I think as better sense prevails, like Vijay ji is saying, it will happen.
So one thing I would also ask you is that when you think that the customers are so worry about the changing technology landscape, have they stopped buying petrol vehicles? No.
No. Because वो कस्टमर अब शायद 8 साल
राइट. सो मेरे ख्याल से थोड़ा सा ना ये थोड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स है यहाँ पे. और कोई भी अगर और लोग नेक्सॉन भी खरीद रहे हैं विद द करंट बैटरी टेक्नोलॉजी, लोग MG भी खरीद रहे हैं विद द करंट बैटरी टेक्नोलॉजी. आई थिंक कस्टमर को जब गाड़ी खरीदनी है वो खरीदेगा जो सामने है वो खरीदेगा, उसमें से एक अच्छा मॉडल निकाल के खरीद के आगे बढ़ेगा. ही विल प्रॉब्ली बिकॉज कार इन इंडिया इज यूटिलिटी, राइट. He cannot hold back his decision कि जब बेस्ट बैटरी और बेस्ट व्हीकल आएगा तब के लिए मैं वेट करूँगा, वो नहीं होगा. यहाँ पे सोल्यूशन ये है कि थोड़ा सा कंपनीज को एंड मे बी सम पुश फ्रॉम पॉलिसी कि जो भी प्रोडक्ट अवेलेबल है मार्केट में उसके बेनिफिट्स, उसके इकोनॉमिक्स जो है कस्टमर्स को अच्छे से समझाएं, जो उनकी क्वेरीज है वो रिजॉल्व करें. एंड द टिपिकल मार्केटिंग प्ले, यू कैन सेल एनीथिंग विद अ गुड स्टोरी एंड सो दैट वॉल्यूम्स मार्केट में आए. क्योंकि जब तक वॉल्यूम्स मार्केट में नहीं आएंगे नया टेक्नोलॉजी एडवांसमेंट के लिए इन्वेस्टमेंट भी जस्टिफाई नहीं होगा. अगर किसी ने 10 बिलियन खर्च किया एक बैटरी बनाने में, वो अगली बैटरी बनाने में तब तक नहीं खर्चा करेगा जब तक कि वो 10 बिलियन रिकवर नहीं होंगे. उसके लिए वॉल्यूम्स चाहिए,
500 2000
है ना.
4000
तो
बैटरी
गाड़ी बनाइए जो भी आपकी करंट अंडरस्टैंडिंग. अब जैसे iPhone 1 भी जो आया था, वो आया उसके बाद ही 2 आया ना. आफ्टर iPhone 1 से सोल्ड वेल, देन 3 and 4. बीच में कोई सा भी अगर मॉडल पिट जाएगा तो अगला जो मॉडल है वो डिले हो जाएगा. एज सिंपल एज दैट. तो जो गाड़ियाँ मार्केट में हैं और अच्छी स्टोरी के साथ, अच्छे अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ, ट्रांसपेरेंसी के साथ बेचिए. अच्छे वॉल्यूम्स मार्केट में है, उसके बाद नेक्स्ट टेक्नोलॉजी आएगी तो पब्लिक देखेगी. फिर जो नया बैच ऑफ कस्टमर है वो उसको देखेगा.
So I have another dynamics of entire this renewable energy and urban mobility. How clean is this? Because 60% of our entire energy is produced by coal and other fossil fuel, and we charge our electric vehicle from the electricity produced by the coal, and then we call it a clean energy. I'll take that question, but first I would like to have audience if they have any questions and they would like to ask our panelists about that. So please, Mr. Anshu, if you can start with how clean are our clean energy vehicles?
In fact, in Niti Aayog, this is one thing I had mentioned to Mr. Sinha, that, sir, आप इलेक्ट्रिक कर रहे हो क्योंकि दैट वाज द टाइम व्हेन दे पुल द प्लग फ्रॉम हाइब्रिड. मैंने कहा कि सर जब तक थर्मल पावर स्टेशन इंडिया में हैं इतने, जब तक इवन इफ यू से कि जी ये वाला चार्जिंग स्टेशन तो मैंने सोलर पैनल से चार्ज किया है, बट नहीं, यू हैव टू लुक एट इट होलिस्टिकली. दैट सोलर unit could have gone into the grid and it could have reduced, a little bit of the thermal power energy, right? But जब तक वो नहीं होता, the only benefit that Abhishek ji I can suggest is कि pollution is being displaced. देखिए
Displaced, not contained.
Not contained but displaced. तो एटलीस्ट ये है कि देखिए दिल्ली और जो भी क्राउडेड मेट्रोज हैं उसमें आज अगर ग्रीन व्हीकल्स चल रहे हैं तो एटलीस्ट जो एमिशंस हैं वो थोड़ी बेटर हो रही हैं. एयर इज बिकमिंग स्लाइटली बेटर और इट विल बिकम बेटर एज देयर इज मास अडॉप्शन ऑफ दिस इन दिस. बट अगर हम कार्बन क्रेडिट्स की तरफ से कह रहे हैं तो यू 100% करेक्ट. जब तक इंडिया इज गोइंग टू हैव अ प्रीडोमिनेंट थर्मल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फॉर पावर, you are not going to be able to genuinely claim that. हाँ, आप ये दिखाने के लिए कह सकते हैं कि जी मैंने ये वाला तो पूरा renewable से किया है, but I don't know. I always feel that's being a little disingenuous.
So, and also, Mr. Jaiswal, the another important point in this entire renewable, vertical is about the waste that we produce, because the batteries get disintegrated after like a couple of years or 4 years or 5 years. So there has not been any proper waste management policy or the way it can be reutilized or it can be, dumped in a way that is not hazardous to the environment. If you can throw some light on it.
I somehow feel that the people like us, we have smarter people in the industry who are making billions of investment in these technologies, knowing that these questions will find answers when the time comes. To even have a very solid or a robust or a mature recycling idea or a market, you need to have enough volumes of batteries to test that idea. There are companies who are extracting critical minerals from these used battery to the extent of 70 to 80%, but they are also struggling because there are not enough vehicles in the market or there are not enough discarded batteries in the market. What I'm trying to say is that when the need or the viability of these questions are sorted, the answers will be found. If US or China are investing heavily in the battery manufacturing and electric vehicle ecosystem and electric vehicle market, they have also thought of this and they definitely see an answer, maybe not at scale, not with economic viability at present, but at some point. I would particularly like to answer your previous question, which was about solar energy mix and energy mix. So there is a study by ICCT which says that if we just talk about electric trucks in India, and we talk about, so the study by, I'm just reading this out. The study by ICT estimates that the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of BETs, which is battery electric trucks in India, will be about 17 to 29% lower than their diesel truck counterparts, even with a grid average electricity mix, the present grid average. And if you take it to 100% renewable, there will be 78 to 83% great scenario. But isn't 29% or 17% good enough a reason to get started?
To get started, and
to get started, right?
In totally new.
If you want 100% to happen, then only you'll start. You're looking for an excuse somewhere, right? 29% reduction in GHG emissions. If somebody tells Delhi people that you will have 30% reduction, there'll probably be one more Diwali in the middle of the year, right? So we get started. We don't always look for the perfect situation to be there to get started. That's how it should be.
He wants to make some point.
So just in the recycling paradigm, I fully agree. And one thing good that Bharat Sarkar is doing this time is that they are being conscientious about looking at the entire life cycle of at least the batteries, right? They've also introduced a scrapping policy where they're looking at the life cycle of the vehicle also, right? But somewhere the paradigm, the US paradigm of use and throw is still there, at least in the government mind right now, which we are trying to kind of counter. There is an association of about 28 companies which is basically involved in retrofitting existing ICE engines into electric, right? And our goal is that, look, ultimately if economics has to play a part, then if you can electrify an existing vehicle at a lower cost, then there is a segment of the population which is very cost sensitive. They will adopt that, right? By only focusing incentives on new vehicles built by an OEM, government is basically denying the opportunity for the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. In fact, in Niti Aayog I had mentioned, and Vijay ji, I would like that you help as policy influencer, you should take this on. That look, there is. I told him कि sir, Connaught Place में Nike showroom है, 20 lakh rupees monthly वो rental दे रहा है showroom के लिए, and is doing roaring business. और उसी के बाद there is a guy selling shoes on the footpath in Connaught Place, वो भी business अच्छा कर रहा है. Because India needs both. How can you as a government policy maker say कि मैं नई इलेक्ट्रिक गाड़ी को ही दूंगा बट रेट्रोफिटेड को नहीं दूंगा? This again is counterproductive, because if it's at a lower cost, the adoption towards electric is what the big goal is. Now how does it matter कि आपको नहीं का करना है, पुरानी को क्यों नहीं कर सकते? This is something which we are fighting as an association, and I raise this issue at various forums because I want people to start realizing that move towards electric should not discriminate between a new vehicle and an existing vehicle.
There must be some industry lobbyist group who are not allowing this retrofitting.
It started with that. I'll be
but
honest
they have
with
to
you.
understand the benefit
At
of it.
ARAI, when the standards for retrofits were being built, the OEMs were called. We were also part of that committee. At every little thing, they were raising objections. Finally, Mr. Deshpande actually told them कि boss, अगर आपकी compliance में reality में देखो road पे क्या होती है, तो फिर you will not be able to say anything. तब जाके वो. But I'm just saying that just because initial policy was devised by the old boys network does not mean that should continue. We need to look at a holistic solution for India, and recycling की आपने question. That's why I'm saying. आज हम क्या कह रहे हैं? हम कह रहे हैं, भारत सरकार कह रही है कि जी अपने पुराने vehicles को जंग कर दो. 6 टन की ट्रक में 2.5 टन, 2 टन के करीब नॉन रिसाइकलेबल वेस्ट होता है, जो आप जंग करके लैंडफिल में भरोगे. जो मेटल है वही तो रिसाइकिल करोगे ना. जब मेटल रिसाइकिल करोगे उसमें भी तो कार्बन निकलेगी ना. हमारा ये पॉइंट है कि उसको अगर आप इलेक्ट्रीफाई कर लो एंड कंटिन्यू रनिंग द एसेट फॉर अनदर डेकेड, हाउ डज इट हर्ट? It's only helping your cause of meeting your Paris Treaty conventions. So these are things where the government really needs to start looking at it in a different light.
And last question, which will be little geopolitical, with the advent of new America that we are seeing, and their approach towards this entire green initiatives kind of conflict that is happening between the tariffs, because the batteries are coming from China, tariffs are being imposed on China and everything. Do you see this renewable energy sector, which is largely located in China, that will be probably the first casualty of this entire war?
That's an interesting question, because of course it'll take time for new supply chains to be, to come up. Sudden disruption will
take years.
Yeah, sudden disruption will definitely hurt, but there are rare earth materials that have been found in South America, which I think India has now started.
How ready are we to counter that thing?
बहुत देर है अभी तो आप देखिए ना, Exide has been trying to make a cell for the industry for the last, I think, few years. अभी तक आता पता नहीं कब तक बनेगी. चलो, yeah, sorry, we
So with this we would conclude our
I just wanted to add to that. One is that I at present, with all the geopolitical narratives in play, feel that China has raised the game not only on basis of price but also on basis of quality. And that is where I feel that this whole current trade war that we see panning out will ease out in due time, because China somehow has strategically built that dependency on various industries with its captive or its domestic supply chain. Having said that, I still feel that there is a need for alternate supply chain destinations to emerge. Who will rise to the occasion? I wish India does, is a question to be answered.
Thank you, our esteemed panelists, Mr. Anshu Dewan and Mr. Vijay Jaiswal, for enlightening us what is happening in this renewable urban mobility sector. And we talked about that, and I think a lot of people got to know what is actually happening behind the curtains also. So thank you once again, and before we conclude, just...
Please stay back, Abhishek. We'd like to felicitate them.
Yeah, thank you.
Ashish ji, please come on stage. We have Mr. Ashish Agrawal from M3M and Abhishek Jha from our team. We also have Arya. She was the coordinator for this dialogue.
So this is small token of love from us. This is a Madhubani painting, which is broadly based in Bihar, and this is made by the artist.
Thank you to our speakers for joining us. And this was a wonderful discussion. The discussions are getting more nuanced. So thank you, Abhishek, for that.